I'm Ruth from Reading Libraries. Today, because it's a bit of a soggy day, I thought I would read you a story about an animal that doesn't mind being in the rain. A frog. It's called Frog Hops Off, and it's written and illustrated by Lydia Monks, and it's published by Macmillan Children's Books, and we're reading it today with their kind permission. Frog was always very bouncy, but today he was feeling very bouncy indeed. He couldn't wait to get to Twit-Twoo School. His teacher, Miss Hoot, had said that today they were going exploring. Frog didn't want to hold Daddy's hand. He was off. When Daddy finally managed to catch up with Frog, he said, "Now listen to what Miss Hoot says today. No bouncing off on your own." "Yes, Daddy," said Frog, who was trying to hold in a huge hop. Frog got to school very early. Eventually, the other children arrived. They were all very excited, and the first thing they explored was each other's lunch boxes. Frog managed to drop his on the floor. Mole helped him pick it up. Owl was very proud of his lunch. He had made it all himself. Rabbit had already eaten most of hers. Miss Hoot gathered the class around. "Today, children," she said, "we are going underground." Frog jumped up, knocking over his lunchbox again. It was going to be even better than he'd thought. "Now listen carefully," continued Miss Hoot, talking to the class, but looking at Frog. "Hold hands with your partner and no running off. I don't want anyone getting lost." Miss Hoot said Frog could be her partner. They set off with Miss Hoot and Frog leading the way. Soon they came to a big dark hole. Down they went. Frog could hardly control his bounces. It was all so exciting. He'd never been underground before. He wanted to jump off ahead to see what was around the next corner, but he remembered what Daddy and Miss Hoot had said, and he was really trying to be good. Miss Hoot and the children went down deeper into the tunnel. Mouse held on tight to Rabbit's hand. She was feeling a little bit nervous. Rabbit wondered if it was lunchtime yet. Mole found a worm. So did Owl. It was the same worm. Frog thought worms were boring. He was much more interested in what was up ahead. He was a brave explorer after all. Frog hopped around the corner. "I won't go far," he thought to himself. There was a bend in the tunnel. "I'll just see what's down here," said Frog. He hopped round the bend, and then around another, and then another. As Frog hopped further down the tunnel, he started to wonder, what if someone lives down here? Not a worm, but someone not very nice. A goblin, a troll, a dragon. Frog stopped hopping. He didn't feel quite so brave now. He thought he'd explored enough. But which way was back? Uh-oh, Frog was lost. He sat down and began to cry. "Oh, why didn't I listen to Miss Hoot?" he sobbed. "Now I'll be lost forever, and I'll have to live with the goblins and the trolls and the dragons, and I'll never see my Daddy again." And with that, Frog really wailed. Suddenly, Frog stopped sobbing. What was that he'd heard? Something was coming down the tunnel. A dragon! Cried Frog. And by the sound of the footsteps, it wasn't just a dragon, it was some goblins and trolls too. Frog closed his eyes tight. He was doomed. But there you are, said the dragon in a kindly voice, a voice that actually sounded a lot like Miss Hoot. Frog opened his eyes. It was Miss Hoot and all the other children, not a dragon or trolls or goblins at all. Didn't I tell you not to bounce off ahead? Said Miss Hoot. You must learn to listen, Frog. Yes, Miss Hoot, I'm really sorry, Miss Hoot, said Frog in a relieved voice. He was feeling a little bit silly now. I won't do it again. I'll be a really good listener. I'm happy to hear that, said Miss Hoot. Now, who'd like lunch? And all the animals cheered. Miss Hoot led the class back through the tunnels and out into the sunshine. When they reached the picnic spot, she said she had a special treat for the children. Frog was still being a good listener, and he heard that very clearly. Frog was worried that he wouldn't be able to have a treat, as he'd been a bit naughty, but Miss Hoot said he could. He was so pleased that he nearly started bouncing again, but he managed to control himself. After a lovely lunch and a bit of a play, it was time to go home. Here was Daddy. Frog was so pleased that he bounced his biggest bounce of the day. He just couldn't help himself. Frog and Daddy hopped off together, and this time Frog held his daddy's hand all the way home. Silly Frog. I'm glad he didn't get stuck in that tunnel and he could come out and have a picnic lunch with everybody. Take care. Enjoy splashing in muddy puddles. See you soon.